that really struck a chord with him was when he said that, and I asked him that India is a difficult market, and I mean, probably Middle East might have been easier. India is very difficult. It just doesn't become easy for any brand who wants to sort of span India. And he said that you have to adapt. And I think that says it all, because, if as long as you understand, no matter how big a group you are, that it takes adaptability to grow in any market, any state. I think, we keep on hearing this all the time in forums, that India is many countries within a country, and it's so very true. So, we love to hear from you about how do you see retail in India as a part of Teblis, which is your company, and you looking to bring retailing to India in a format which would make it successful, which would make it grow, and which would make it exciting for the customer to be in the stores.
Absolutely. First of all, let me thank you for having me here at the Franchise India 2017. You can hear me? Yeah, okay. I think this is better. So, firstly, let me thank you for having me here at the Franchise India 2017 show. For me, this is the first time to be part of this show. And before coming here, I was taking a few rounds at the show, and I should say that, you guys have done an extremely good job. There's a lot of brands, a very exciting scenario. There's a lot of, what do you say, it's more like, we've been searching for certain products that we couldn't find. And today, being part of this show helped us to identify those products, and they have already been retailed out of India, but the companies were unknown. And as you rightly said, India is many countries into one. So getting to understand brands and products from different parts of India becomes very difficult. And a show like this way connects us all together. So hats off for that, and congratulations. On tables, we've started our journey of our tables in the year 2010, when we first launched tables in UAE, the United Arab Emirates, as a brand retailing company for F&B products. We have today running around 8 brands with 35 odd restaurants across UAE, and we've been quite doing well in that market. In the year 2011-2012, when we launched our Lulu Mall in Cochin, we thought that it's an opportunity for us to actually enter the market by testing it, by bringing one of our brands into this market. And when we did that, with the kind of response that we got in that market, we were very excited and thrilled. And we said that, it should not be that, we should stop by bringing this one brand. Let's go and start exploring to bring much more brands. At that point of time, I thought that, India is just not a market that we should concentrate on the F&B segment, and we should bring a basket of brands that is like-minded to our organization and to the factor that goes well with the Indian consumer base. And that's when we went around and added a lot more brands to our basket. Today, we operate around 7 brands, which are 3 in the F&B sector, which is Galitos, which is a South African peri-peri chicken, Cold Stone Creamery, which is a US-based ice cream joint, Bloomsbury, which is a homegrown artisan bakery. That's on the F&B side. And on the toy segment, we currently operate the franchise for Toys R Us and Babies R Us in India. And on the apparel side, we have bought in the Spanish fashion brand, which is Springfield and Women's Secret. All of these brands are currently operational in India in different states, and has got a wonderful response in the market. So answering to your question, what's our take on Indian retail market? We feel and we are a strong supporter of brick and mortar. And as you rightly said, we also strongly feel that the e-commerce segment has taken a leap forward. And the reason to that, and rightly that it has taken the leap forward, is predominantly because the lack of infrastructure. And we missed out the mall culture or the mall development in India. The total era was skipped. And that has led to e-commerce taking its strife. But now, with a lot of organized mall developers coming back into the market, and with larger fund managers such as Blackstone taking up a lead in acquiring and developing malls in India, the mall story has now taken a huge stride forward. And this has resulted in a lot more brands, again, focusing on opening up actual brick and mortar across India. Rightly to be said, in the last, the large e-commerce, the show and sales that was put up, a very interesting factor struck us all, which clearly said that around 60 to 75% of the entire sale that came on the e-commerce was predominantly done on Tier 2 and Tier 3 city. And what does this say? It says clearly to the factor that, the lack of not having accessibility to a lot of malls in that area has led to people choosing the e-commerce route to actually develop and purchase a lot of goods. And have these malls been developed in the Tier 2 and Tier 3 city, it becomes a fabric of the society where people want to be seen. They want to touch and feel the products before they buy it. And predominantly, I feel that, on the e-commerce story side, the electronics or, yesterday there was somebody who told me that, Ford's one of the largest car dealer, Ford in India, and one of largest dealer is Amazon. See, I agree to that factor, and the factor is that here, that anything that is standard, and it is an electronic or consumer products which are standards, it's much more easier to buy it on an e-commerce place. But when it comes to apparel, when it comes to food, when it comes to the toy segment, these are all a lot constitute on the touch and feel. So I'm a strong believer of brick and mortar, and I strongly feel that the Indian retail story for next decade or two would be written on a brick and mortar side.
Yeah, I completely agree with you that you cannot take the touch and feel really out of retailing, because eventually people feel the need to go out, people feel the need to touch what they buy, and they want to sort of experience, the experience can be better, but you cannot sort of take the physicality out of retail. So great point there. You've done a lot of work in Dubai, and Dubai for Indians is a retail mecca. We get all our learnings from either from Dubai or from Southeast Asia, from Singapore or related countries. What do you think are the learnings that are there in the Dubai market for retailing will be very apt for India as well? What practices exist over there that Indian retail can learn from, and what are the practices you feel you want to bring out of that market into the Indian market, which could make the Indian retail more successful? It's hugely successful in Dubai, and it really, nobody sort of differentiates between offline, online, and offline works as beautifully as online does, but the learnings Indian market needs to come from there. So what do you think have been your learnings about the Dubai consumer, about Dubai market, and UAE as a whole, not just Dubai, I would say, but that we can incorporate in the Indian market?
So a large learning that we have taken from the Middle East retail segment is that there are a few mistakes that the Indian retail side had on its initial phase. One which was done by the developers. During the initial sprout of shopping malls in India, a lot of shopping malls were developed by large real estate developers, and what these people did is that they made a beautiful mall and then broke it to small pieces, sell it to multiple investors, assuring them that there would be a great amount of returns on that project. Now, what's so happened is that when you do something like that way, what happens at the end is that there is no accountability on the common area, how it is managed, what are the activities that needs to bring in more footfall into the malls. So all this became the initial drawbacks of the actual shopping mall era in India. Whereas on the Middle Eastern side of things, normally the malls are developed by a large developer. They're all leased out premises. You have the common area maintenance that is done by the mall. There are events that are organized by the mall management team. And all this drives a lot of people. See, a mall is just not a shopping destination in Middle East or rest of the world as such. It's a social socializing place as well, where people get together, do a lot of meetings, have fun with their friends. At the same point of time, does shopping as well. So it's a culture that you develop around the whole ambience around the mall. And initially, I think so that's what went wrong in the Indian retail story, where the mall developers did not actually find the importance of creating that ambience and atmosphere where the local consumer would actually start to feel at home. Another big mistake that most of the mall developers in India did is that you created a million point five square feet of mall, but did around 100 and 200 odd car parks. That's a major flaw in a mall development scenario. You need to have ample car park. You need to make sure your consumers in and out access is with least difficulties as possible. So that's what I said. You know, the Indian retail story missed out the shopping mall era, and the same point of time, they totally missed out the entire infrastructure that needs to be created around a shopping mall for making it an ease destination. In the Lulu Mall that we have developed in Cochin, currently a connection has been made from the metro straight to the mall. It's an ease, convenience for people to come in and out of that mall so easily. That is also practiced in many of the malls across the country, but I think so as and when such easiness develop across many more such malls, a lot of people would then believe and be going back to that mall culture and feeling that, you know, you would be having a lot more activities that you will spend across being in that mall.
Sure. No, I think makes perfect sense, and that's where an aggregator like Blackstone today found that opportunity, who could understand what were the challenges, and as you do yourself, that, you know, this is how we need to bring correction. There are enough and more malls now out there, but we need more correction to be happen within malls to get the retail right. So, you know, Mr. Ahmed, you're in food and you're in fashion, which are your two chief industries. So if I were to ask you to choose one favorite industry, you know, so maybe whether fashion or food, why would it be so? And what opportunity do you see in either of these industries? In fact, I would like you to comment on both, really. For the Indian, from an Indian consumer point of view, you know, so it's not as if, so this was interestingly 3 years back when we did a study at Franchise India, we realized the top 10 food brands that were liked by Indian consumers, 7 were actually international brands that had come to India. So we have a huge affinity for international brands. How do you see for your own brands as well as for retail in general, food and fashion going forward, both within malls, in the high streets, and from a consumption point of view?
So on the F&B side and on the apparel side, of course, there is always a fascination towards more on the F&B side. Why? Because food is something that is all very dear to us, and, you know, we enjoy where we go and eat, and there is always memories attached to that food palette that we have in our childhood and as we grow up as well. So F&B plays a very important part in our portfolio, and currently we have 3 brands, and we're looking to expand that portfolio as well. Apparel is very important. At the same point of time, fashion plays a very important aspect in the whole society as well, and how the society is being dressed up. I think it gives a lot of confidence in that society on the way that you are, and you know, what you wear and so on and so forth. So I think so apparel plays also a very important aspect. So it's difficult to choose between both, but I think so both has its own space. But in terms of the Indian retail side, I feel that, you know, the F&B side has a huge more opportunity that is still not explored. A lot more international brands wants to come to India. A lot more Indian brands have taken a lot of learning from international brands and started to getting them more organized, more process driven rather than people driven, allowing them to be franchised across India. I think so these are all great learnings that these startup Indian franchisable F&B concept have taken. And as you rightly said, the Indian diaspora has a huge fascination to Western brands. Why? Because an average Indian is either well-traveled or well-read or well-researched. So to the factor is that they're always aware of all these great international brands, and they like to see it in their neighborhood as well.
Sure. I totally agree with you that, you know, it's about memories, and the more the brand would end up creating memories for people, the more they would want to be there, the more they would want to, you know, patronize that store or the brand at large everywhere they go. You know, this is very interesting for me, and we would love to take your comments on this. That when a brand is actually, you know, when you get a foreign brand to come to India or to UAE, how do you sort of work with the foreign partner, the brand principal, to see that it has resonance? And this is something that has actually come up in a debate, quite a few since this morning also. how do you make it more, give the local customer a feel of, that they're not going to a completely different place, or it's an American brand or a European brand? How do you personalize it for them? How do you localize it for them? So do you have some strategy that you do it all across wherever you've opened stores, that there's some element or percentage of localization that you bring within that food or the fashion store?
So in terms of franchising any brands to India, there are a few key points that has to be always set right from the beginning. One of which is managing expectations. Managing expectations between the franchisee and the franchisor. We have talked to an N number of brands internationally who wants to see their presence here. But most of the times when we speak to these brands, the biggest challenge that we find is to the factor that, their expectations are unrealistic, where they see India as a billion plus market. They expect that, every other day you need to open up a store in India. And we always go back to them and tell them that, see, these are all very unrealistic expectations that you have. There are a lot of things that you have to do. India is on its growth story element. So that means that, we need to be keeping pace with the growth, but not try to outpace the whole growth aspect. And the predominant factor here is that they need to be a fabric of our society, rather than India being an aspiration point to them. They need to understand the average Indian thought process. They need to understand the dressing sense of an average Indian. And they need to understand about how do you localize a lot of products. You see, India being a billion people plus market, a lot of people try to still import a lot of products to India. So making in India for India is very important, and that gives a very cost benefit to the brand being in India. And that's seen across all major retailers who have come to India, whether it is the like of Zara, H&M. Once they have come and established themselves in India, the second thing they thought is that, how do I start the production, or how do I start my sourcing out of India, And this, I think so, is very important. As a franchisor, you need to make this condition very clear to the franchisor, that as in we start to build base and we start to pick up the volume, you need to now start thinking about how do we get the opportunity to start franchising these products out of India. Unless that is not done, you would never get a cost benefit, and you will never be able to scale to a large extent in India. So that's my advice, saying that, a franchisee has as much to work in India as much as franchisor also have.
And in food also, do you see the same need for bringing some local flavor or some local, some connect?
No, in terms of food, it's more about vendor management. So here the factor here is that an international franchisor or the franchisee of the brand predominantly has a set distributor, supplier, who's supplying you a certain things to make sure that the quality of the product is not undermined at any point of time. So it's up to you as the franchisee of the brand to make sure that you give them the right alternatives to their supplier who's been supplying it internationally, and try to see as much as products that you can source out of the Indian market itself. We have done with all the brands that we have. So whether it is the South African peri-peri chicken, currently we even make the spice mix in India, And a lot of times what has come into light is to the factor that the franchisee were much more happier with the products that was made in India, that really thought about how do we source it and supply it to the international community where they have operations as well.
One of the complaints I've always heard from Indian retailers was that, the rental sort of killed the whole business. And is it true in the UAE market as well?
It's a global scenario, And I mean, we don't say it because we play part in both the side of our business. So it's really unfair to sit on one side of the table. But of course, in India, the problem is the land cost. The land costs are extremely high. Building a project and making it viable has its own challenges. So of course, the asking rental, and there are certain things that, people like in Dubai. I give you an example. The rentals on Dubai Mall, which is a prime mall in UAE, is always higher to the rest of the malls. But Also, the amount of footfall that is happening to these to Dubai Mall is always 2 or 3 times more than any other mall in the country. So the mall developer has also rightly deserved to ask for a certain rentals if their footfall has been to the expectation of what they have promised you. So it's on both the sides. It's about then up to you on how you could capitalize on that footfall that is happening to the mall.
Absolutely. Love to hear some questions from the audience also about what they think about retailing and franchising practices. And I'm sure a lot of us, all of us have experience from understanding retail in Dubai. So I think it would be a great if we can take your mind, hear your ideas on this. The gentleman has a question. If we can please pass on the mic.
Hello. Well, my question is, you was talking about the apparel category that is more beneficial in the brick and mortar case rather than the e-commerce. Even I strongly agree with that. But considering the rentals which he asked, how to come over that. So the e-commerce people, they enjoy this thing. They don't worry about the rentals. They don't about the running cost, rentals, so they can give more discounts online. How to come up with that thing?
So it's a two-sided sword. Actually, the problem is when you bring an international brand to India, what's the first thing that you need to think about? Yes, e-commerce gives you a lot of visibility, but let's talk about the brands that we have. Springfield Women's Secret. I could assure you that 90% of the people sitting in this room have not heard about this brand before I spoke about it. True to the factor is that these are brands that have 1,000+ outlets internationally and are present in over 60 odd countries. But that doesn't mean anything to the Indian market segment as much. So it could be a very much an alienated brand for India. And that's what we took up our viewpoint on that brand. But we love the brand because of the product quality that they have and the element to the factor that they are connected with the youth of today. Both these brands, whether it is Women's Secret, which is an women's essential brand, and Springfield. The Springfield is more urban, youth-oriented brand. And which other country better than India to be present in with such a demographic of youth being present? So the first impulse for us is to make sure that the brand is known and becomes a part of the Indian fabric. So for that, it's necessary for us to be more and more visible, where the touch element plays a more important role rather than being on the e-commerce. So e-commerce could be a gradual story, but more important is for me to be present as much closer to as possible to the consumers, make them aware of the brand, get that brand more traction in India, post which, I would think about moving to the online, which gives a lot more convenience to the people. So what is e-commerce to me today? E-commerce to me is if one of my consumer comes into the store, likes a certain product, but he or she does not find the size, gets an opportunity to place the order for that product on the store itself and have it delivered to the to her or his residence, or wherever the address is. So that's e-commerce for me today, But I'm strongly still wanting to be having and giving my consumers more touch and feel.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, the scenario in India is like it's cross-promotion. You got to have the online presence too and the offline too. So it's like cross-promotion these days.
I'll strongly tell you one thing in this, that online is early, but it's also a myth. So whatever monies, and you'll see it in the coming years, it's been true for most of the world, that the marketplace is so crowded that eventually to push your product up, push your brand up, you'll have to put a lot more advertising dollar behind it. Otherwise, nobody will be able to see your brand online or in the e-commerce space. So whatever offset you see right now in terms of rentals is probably gonna, get dissolved into that advertising dollar. So net, you basically would be doing the same. You will either be giving a rental or you'll be putting money behind advertising. So it's something that one needs to evaluate. Right now it looks as if, there are no rentals and one can just make money out of e-commerce. It just doesn't work that way. So, and eventually it's
Totally
only
agree.
gonna increase. So, I was telling him that I think Zara is much better off doing a Zara.com or Zara.in, whatever
Yes,
they're doing right
obviously,
now.
obviously.
It's a far better strategy. You pull your, I think eventually you need to put your dollar behind building your brand. Rest is just a channel.
Yes.
Mr. Ahmed, in fact, now he's triggered this point. How do brands which are established, I mean, you've got established brands, Women's Secret is a big brand, Springfield is a big brand. What would their eventual strategy be? How would they sort of think omni-channel? And what kind of dollar would you want to put in India to build an omni-channel setup?
Yeah. So for people such as us and all the people who wants to take an India-wide franchise story and wants to bring in brands to India, I'm sure that the brand principles first question is that what is your brick and mortar strategy? What is your omni-channel strategy? When asked question to us, my answer to them is that give us a couple of years time to let me build presence. And as in when I start building presence and volume in the market, my first choice would be to put up a .com, exactly like what Zara and most of other larger players have done. And then slowly start to see whether tomorrow e-commerce becomes a viable channel to be part of, or a marketplace becomes a viable channel for us to be part of. So predominantly for us is to build up brick and mortar. At the same point of time, it gives the ease of buying for consumer by being on a .com scenario.
I see there are more questions in the house.
There's one from my side. It's mainly on the same lines. I think what we all are talking about here is the online business, which is right now going up. So, are you, as you mentioned, Mr. Ahmed, that so for example, if I take your franchisee and I'm part of it now, what kind of security will I get back from you in the saying that, or anyone as a franchisor that for this much period of time, our brand we will not be selling it on Amazon or for that matter, Mantra, because that will give me a sense of security at the back that, at least my products is not being cross-sold across the line. And now coming to your point, which you mentioned, right? Because the touch and feel factor, I was always of the mind that this is very important for a customer to be there. But at the same time, I tell you as a practice, right? When I order something online and I have to buy a shirt, I order 20 shirts. They all come to my place. I check them. The one which I feel, I touch them, I feel them, I keep one, I return 19. There's no questions asked policies. So I think online business is now entering into these areas as well, where they are giving you the touch and feel as well. So looking at the complete picture of the scenario, I think there is a little bit of risk, there is a little bit of fear. So you as a franchisor, how do you tackle these? And coming to his point, like of the rents being so high, are you also looking at the places where we reduce our shop sizes so that our brand as a picture is there, but majority of business is happening online? So these are just my thoughts, my questions to it.
So I split the question into two sides. The first one is about sub-franchising that you have touched base. We as Tables don't sub-franchise at this point of time. We company-owned and operated stores actually across. But there may be a time where that we may think about sub-franchising. Currently, we don't do it because we feel that a lot more has to be invested on building the brand in India. And that has to be done with a master franchise such as ourselves. And once the brand gains momentum, the thought process would come whether we have to sub-franchise or not. Secondly, on your aspect about whether we should reduce the number of stores and then, everything that you have explained has a cost element attached to it. You ordering 20 outfit, coming to you, and then you returning. There's a cost of transportation that is happening. The logical movement of goods from one place to another, warehousing at different points, that means that I have to have a larger inventory at my store. If I have to service a customer sitting out down south in Kerala to somebody who's sitting up in Kashmir or in Delhi as such, So the multiple warehousing, storing of large-scale products, all this has a cost element attached to it, So where we as the brand developer is looking at is slowly start building up your base from down south upwards. And as and when we build up that base, try to get more online also towards that segment, so that it's an organic growth rather than it's an inorganic growth by being present everywhere in different states. India is such a large country. I don't think so we should be so ambitious that in day one we should be present across. I think so gradually on a solid ground we should be building up base. But that's very unique to us. It's not a strategy that is adapted by many franchises in India or many developers across India, because for them expanding makes a large amount of sense, and for an organization such as us, we would like to do it in our own pace.
Okay, thank you.
There's another question in the house.
Hi, Mr. Ahmed. You spoke about mall innovation. In India, we already have ample number of malls. Does your company intend to innovate these malls, bring some sort of innovation to malls that are already existing? For example, the parkings inside the malls and other things besides the Lulu malls that you've intended to start?
Sure. I don't actually do the day-to-day operations of the mall, but on a larger context, I'd like to explain. When we built the mall in India, at the time we built a 1.5 million square feet mall in Cochin. And when we built that mall, it had around 3,000 car parks already as a part of that development, because we understood that without actual car parks, the mall would not take shape. And then post which we had to build another standalone parking building just to suffice the need of more people who are going to visit inside. On an average, currently we do around 60,000 people on a weekday and close to around 85 to 90,000 people on a weekend. That's the current footfall that we enjoy in our mall in Cochin. As you rightly said, mall needs to evolve, and evolution is happening everywhere else in this world, and India also has to take up the leaf of evolution. Mall should not be just a shopping destination. It needs to be much more than that. In Dubai, we have organizers who currently do evening walks. It's an event that has been done. You have malls that has larger community spaces which are half open, half closed. So there is a natural interaction also with the nature inside the mall itself. Then you have people who are more focused on the health side. So malls that are largely doing a lot of spaces allocated for health-related products like as gymnasiums. You have aerobics. You have yogas. So a lot more events happening at that one mall itself. Currently, malls are also a place where people like to have your dentist put up a store. Mall is a place where you would like to see your veterinarian so that you could take your things. You have in a mall, you would have a play center for your child, so where the child could be left on the daycare center while you go out for shopping. So a shopping mall scenario is also evolving very fast, where a lot more activities has been bundled up, and it is a one-stop shop for everything. So that evolution is also happening, and I'm sure that the India mall story is also is going to get evolved to that level.
Sure. I think they're really community centers, and eventually good malls are the ones which get people to visit more often from a community point of view rather than just for one store or one shopping trip kind of a story. And I think India still is evolving to that. We've not sort of think of malls as high streets. High streets are more like chaat khane ja rahe and everything. So mall has to sort of go down that way to be able to really be successful and get its ROI out. So what are the other, I know while you're more on the retail side, but what other Lulu malls are likely to come up in India in the coming years?
The second mall has been already announced in Trivandrum, which is the capital city of Kerala. And when I say that, then most of the people would say that, why are you so concentrated around Kerala itself, And that's not the story. We're looking at other opportunities across India as well. Soon there would be announcement of malls up north and in middle of India as well. Those are all in pipeline. I think so at a point of time we would make the right announcements.
Sure, and we're very excited to put more brands out there with you as well. So I've been given the cue on time, but one thing I like to sort of for you to tell us is, you're a very adventurous entrepreneur. You know, betting retail in India, it calls for some adventure and risk-taking appetite from your end, and which is a good thing. We need more entrepreneurs like that. But so what sort of spirits you up as an entrepreneur? You know, we love to know a little more about you and your entrepreneurial spirit, and what gives you that kick in the morning to say, you know, this is doable, and if it's nobody else is going to do it, I'm going to bloody well figure it out how to get it done.
I think so. See, I'm a person who says that, you know, you need to be loving and liking what you do, and I tell this to all my team members. You know, so I mean, I think the last 10 years that I've done on this journey, the most exciting thing that I have achieved in the last decade or so is to the factor that, you know, the team that was there with me on day one is still with me 10 years down the line, you know. And I think so that says a lot about the culture of our organization, to the factor that, you know, we don't consider ourselves as multinational corporations, and it's not about always hitting up the large numbers year on year, being a very corporate minded, where we are also very much focused on our ROI. Our primary interest is the human asset that we have. We like people to grow with us. We like people to feel that this is their place. We are an entrepreneurial organization where we would like to keep all our departments as entrepreneurs and not as just workers between us. So I think so developing that human touch between different verticals of my organization at the same point of time, developing that the closeness and bringing a community inside who's standing shoulder to shoulder between each of our members. I started with a 5-member team. Today we are a little less than a 3,000-member team spread across 9 odd countries. But the factor is that our staff turnover ratio is less than 5% and gives us a huge amount of confidence that, you know, the entire learning that we have taken up in last 10 years between our team gives us a lot of straightway to go ahead and create more, you know. About risk-taking, without risk-taking, no entrepreneurship is possible. It's very much necessary. It's part and parcel of the cycle. So, I mean, for me to say it's all about the team. It's just not about one person who have done astronomically well. If we have grown, it's just not because of me. It's because of the entire team that has been there in the organization, who has played their part well. And, you know, that gives me an opportunity to sit across you on the stage.
Super. I think well said. And he's a man who believes in partnerships. I mean, you know, there's like so many partners he has, so many brands they have partnered with across the world and brought them to countries like India, which says a lot about your spirit of building teams and building partners to grow the business forward. So thank you very much, Mr. Ahmed. I think it's been a wonderful thing for all of us here to know about your
Thank you.
Enterprising spirit and the fact that you're going to sort of bring a new retail scenario to India. We're very much looking forward to it.
I'm excited too. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Ritu. I'm going to request you to please present a memento to our speaker, Mr. Adib Ahmed, as well. And thank you once again for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, we're now about to march ahead to our next panel discussion before we break for lunch. So it's important that we get understanding on going global and building business beyond borders. Stage very quickly. I'm going to request you all to please come forward so that we're all going to be part of this next panel discussion. And once again, we're going to have with us Ms. Venus Barak, who's going to be moderating the panel discussion. She's the Vice President of Fran Global. So I'm going to invite Ms. Venus on stage as well. Welcome back. Managing Director, Energy Fitness International Development, and Mr. Harish Babla, who's the CFE Managing Director and CEO, Global Franchise Masters Private Limited. Well, there's a sudden lull in the air. Can we fill it up with some round of applause to welcome all our panel members? And what are you all doing right behind? Come forward. I'm going to request you all to come forward. There's a lot of space right over here. Wonderful indeed. All the ones who are seated right behind, please come forward. This is our panel discussion, very nicely plugged in just before the lunch. So let's have you all come forward. Let's participate together and let's get the session started. So Venus, over to you.
Thank you so much. I think that was a great session.